Hey folks, Brian here, and I want to share with you today what I feel is one of the best things I ever did as a dad. I was talking recently to a friend who he and his wife are in the process of adopting a baby girl. Like brand new, a few days old. And they already have a little boy. And I was talking about the differences, and I told him, you have no idea. I said, daddy's girls are different. And I told him about something another friend had told me one time. We were having a conversation about our kids, and he said, I would die for my son. I would kill for my daughter. And that pretty much sums it up. So, I had girls. I was almost 32 when our first daughter was born. The next one was like a year and a half later. And then our son was much later. I was almost 41. He was kind of a surprise, a great surprise. But, so I was a girl dad long before I was a boy dad. And girls, I don't know you can put a specific percentage or anything, but girls get, I feel, the majority of their self-esteem from their father. And I knew that, so I was always building my girls up, not focusing so much on their looks, although they're very pretty girls, and that's fine, but that's not where their value is. I was constantly telling them how proud I was of them, what great daughters they were, what great friends they were to their friends, how smart they were. I was accentuating their good qualities, things they did well, and really building them up. And I always showed them a lot of affection, so that they weren't starved for affection and have to go find it somewhere else. But one of the things I did, both of my girls, when they turned 13, and I'll tell you about Rebecca since she was older and it happened with her first. She turned 13 in 2011. And so a few days before her birthday, I called her on the phone. And I said I wanted to take her out to dinner, and told her to dress up a little nice. And on her birthday that night, I rang the doorbell. She opened the door. I'm standing there with a shirt and tie, flowers in my hand, and I took her to Carrabba's, and we just had a great time and just talked. And we talked about boys, and we talked about relationships, and we talked about marriage, and we just talked about all sorts of things like that. And I didn't really have notes, but I just kind of had in my mind what I wanted to say. And we talked about relationships and dating. And of course, at 13, you're not dating, you're going together. But I talked about, some of her friends who already were in a habit, a different boyfriend every week or whatever. And I said, the reputation those girls have. And we talked about dating and how dating is preparation for marriage. When you date someone, you're getting to know them, you're seeing how compatible you are, you're seeing how much you like each other and stuff. And if you realize if you know that's not the person you're going to marry, then there's no point in dating them. And we talked about divorce and how breaking up is practice for divorce. I said, you see these friends who they got a new boyfriend every week or whatever, and they're breaking up. They're getting a habit of getting into a relationship, something doesn't work out right or whatever, and they get out of it. And that is just practice for divorce. And I really emphasized how bad that was, and how divorce, and don't get me wrong, I know there's people that are divorced. God offers grace and forgiveness and mercy and healing, but there's principles. And scripture says that God hates divorce. And I told her, it's not because you broke one of his rules or you broke a promise to God or to your spouse. He hates it because of what it does to the people involved. When a couple consummates their relationship, whether it's in marriage or outside of marriage, when they perform that act, there's a joining of the spirits. The scripture says the two become one. So if you later divorce or just break up, you're literally ripping yourself in half. You're not a complete person anymore. And there's so much pain there. And I said, you see what it does to the kids? You have friends whose parents are divorced. I said, can you imagine having to come visit me on the weekends or something? And then you see the parents get remarried, and there's a new baby, and then the kid's like, how come that kid gets my dad all the time, and I only get my dad every other weekend? So you see what it does. So we talked about that, and we talked about marriage. We talked about covenant and what marriage is, and how it's ordained by God, and how it represents, we talked about the bride of Christ, and it's a whole beautiful thing. And I talked about, what you'd look for in a future husband. And I talked about, I said, when you find the right guy, you will know it. Your mom and I will know it. And I said, when you go to a wedding, the first thing practically that the pastor says is, who gives this woman to be married? And her dad says, her mother and I. I said, how can he say that if she is not his to give? I told her, you are mine. And I don't mean that like those greedy seagulls, mine, mine, mine. I mean it as the responsibility that I have. And I said, I'm not just gonna give you walk down the aisle and give you away to some idiot. It's gonna be the right guy. And I said, and we talked about the responsibilities of a dad, and I said, scripture says that the children are like the arrows in the quiver of a skilled hunter. And I talked about what that means. In those times, that hunter, he wasn't just hunting to put a deer head over his fireplace. That was to provide. That, say he killed a deer. That meat was for his family. That provided for his family. The hide, the skin, could be used for clothing, for other things. The antlers could be made into tools. It could be used for trade. He could go to his neighbor and say, hey, I'll give you 2 pounds of venison for a basket of green beans. And used to barter, things like that. So it was very important. So those arrows that he had, he made sure that they were straight and that the points were sharp, and he practiced with them. He shot targets, made sure that those arrows flew straight and hit the mark. I said, that's how important that is. And that's what children are. And so we talked a lot about that, and then I gave her a ring. And we didn't call it a purity ring or a promise ring, but she knew the significance of it. We talked about that. And it wasn't cheap. It was probably $100 or so. So it wasn't super expensive, but it wasn't, something of a gumball machine either. So we talked about the significance of that, and I gave her a ring, and it was just a great thing. And a year and a half later, I did the same thing with my next daughter, and they both, Rebecca has found the best guy. I never could have found anybody better for her. They serve the Lord together in ministry. They've given me 2 wonderful grandchildren. You'll be hearing a lot about those in these videos. And Emily has found a great guy. They'll be getting married this year, and he is just fantastic for her, and he's a great guy, and it's a great thing. So I just wanted to encourage, especially you dads, especially if you have younger daughters, to be intentional about your daughters, in complimenting them, in building up their self-esteem, in showing them affection, and in training them in the ways of the Lord, teaching them the scriptural principles that are in place. So I encourage you with that. I know this video has been a little longer, but I didn't want to rush through this one and like I usually do. So thank you for watching. Be encouraged, you dads out there. And as always, stay salty, my friends.